Episode 224, Healing, Hope, and Help for Foster and Adoptive Families with Bonnie Butler.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a highly trained, experienced life coach making a great impact in the lives of their clients. And together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with a coach? Here we go.
In this episode, Coach Bonnie Butler shares her powerful journey as a mother of 10, including 6 adopted children, and the challenges and healing that come with foster and adoptive parenting. She opens up about emotional regulation, rebuilding relationships, and letting go of guilt and control. Bonnie also introduces her free virtual summit designed to support foster and adoptive parents with tools like EFT, handling meltdowns, advocacy in schools, and more. This conversation is a must listen for anyone seeking greater compassion and connection in parenting. Please enjoy.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches today, everybody. I am so happy to have Coach Bonnie Butler with me today. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi,
How you doing?
I am good. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I was laughing because Bonnie and I have had the chance to visit with each other almost like 3 days in a row. I had the opportunity to be coached by Bonnie last Thursday, which was amazing. If you get our emails, if you're on our Struggle to Strength emails, you can watch the replay of that. And it was really short and sweet, but very powerful for me and really helpful. So anyway, if you ever want to watch coaching, that's a great way to figure out what coaching is. Get on that email list and you can watch those replays or participate in them yourself, get coached yourself. So, but Bonnie, thank you. Thank you for doing that for me.
You're very welcome. It was fun. It was spur of the moment, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
what we had planned, but so often in life, that's how life plays out, right? We're just
Yep.
given these moments of unexpected opportunity, and we just have to walk through the door and see what comes.
Yep.
So,
It was perfect. It was what I needed that day. And then yesterday, the coaches here, we have group calls a couple times a month, and we worked on some matching scriptures with feelings yesterday. And that was kind of a fun thing to do too. I love our that we get to kind of intersect our religious views and our professional views in so many ways here as coaches. So anyway, and then here we are again today recording. It's a good time.
yeah, very fun. I loved yesterday. A lot of what I do is working with emotional regulation with these foster and adoptive parents. So I always love hearing other people's insights. Some things came up yesterday, definitions of words and things that I really loved that discussion.
Yeah, it's so great. All right. Well, Bonnie mentioned a little bit about what she does, but I'm going to let her give a little bit more detail. She's been on before if you want to go back and catch that podcast. But I want her to introduce herself again, just in case you didn't hear that one. So, Bonnie, can you tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. I am a mom of 10. I have 4 biological kids and 6 adopted kids. We've fostered 17 kids over a 4-year period. And the sibling group that we adopted were our last placement into foster care, and then we adopted them. So our journey with foster and adoption started all the way back in 1996, and we have had some really amazing experiences, some really painful and difficult experiences. But through all of that, we just kind of held on, and I feel like I have had some real rewards for not giving up when things got tough. And I had to kind of go through some journey for myself to understand myself better. And through that journey, I ended up having Heavenly Father tell me that He needed me to be a life coach and start helping other people who are really struggling in the foster and adoption world, and to help some of these parents figure themselves out so they can be more effective with their kids. So I have been coaching for about 4 years now, and I absolutely love what I do. I am passionate about these families and helping them have better experiences and helping these parents understand that they can have confidence in their parenting and that they can untangle all of the thoughts and emotions that are creating so much suffering within themselves and within their families. So
Hmm.
that's my little spiel.
I think most of us, including myself, listening, can't even comprehend taking on that many children at one time. I feel like I could just sit down at your feet and learn so much from you. So I'm glad that we have this glimpse today into it because it just seems unimaginable, really. So because I know how hard a lot of work that would take.
It can be a lot of work. And I think what I've learned, part of my own journey was getting lost in the chaos and the challenge and the hardships and not understanding how to get out, because so often these kids come into our homes and we just open our homes out of, the goodness of our heart, and we want to help these kids, and so many of us are impressed and led to it by Heavenly Father. And then these children come in and they have just unbelievable trauma in their life that we weren't prepared for.
Mhm.
And through that, I just feel like I missed so many moments of joy and light and laughter and fun because I was sinking in the feeling of failure because I couldn't figure out what their needs were, much less how to meet them. And allowing all of that to just kind of get tangled up inside of me that I was a failure if these kids were not succeeding. And so that journey to figure out for myself that I can separate myself from their behavior and that I can actually feel total peace and find joy even when it's total chaos going on around me. And what I learned through that journey was that the more centered I became, and the more I understood myself, understood thought management, emotional regulation, and expectation management, and the better I got at that, the calmer I was. And that rippled out, and the calmer my home was, and the calmer my children were. And I've seen so much healing come within our family over the last couple of years as I have really used these tools in my own life and watched as my children have watched me. And sometimes I'll coach my kids if they ask for it. And just bridges being rebuilt that were damaged and burned. And last summer, for the first time in 10 and a half years, we had a family reunion where all 10 of our children were in the same place at the same time. 7 of their spouses, 24 of our 27 grandkids. And we had 3 days of just joy and love and laughter and healing and rebuilding relationships and starting from scratch. And, we had lots of family activities over that 10 and a half years. But this one's mad at that one, or they're mad at me, or their dad, or whatever the situation was. They didn't want to be with us. And so for 10 and a half years, we had a few here, a few there, whatever. But I really just look at that reunion last year as my reward for not giving up when it got hard and for figuring myself out and being able to handle all the chaos and the challenges in a better way and be a more effective parent. And I've seen my kids start to rebuild relationships with their siblings without my husband and I instituting anything to do with that. And that has just been this tremendous joy to watch them reach out to each other on their own. Yeah, it's been great.
The word rebuilding really stood out to me there because I think that a lot of times part of our sadness and frustration is we just think, well, this is it. Nothing's ever going to be fixed. It's just going to be this is the way that is from here on out, right? We have kind of like this
Right.
definitive line in the sand.
Over. Yeah.
And I it's so important to remember that we're never over, we're never through. It's always a
Right.
process. We're always building and things can be repaired. And I think it's so important to remember that because we grow, we change. And as we do that, our
Yes.
relationships grow and our relationships
Mhm.
change. And it's such a gift, right? And
Yeah, it really is. And I look back, I shudder at some of the mistakes that I made. I'm like, oh my word. But my kids have been willing to forgive me and been willing to stick it out with me as well. And there have been periods where this child or that child would not talk to me at all and, pulled back from the family. But it is really sweet to be in that place of rebuilding right now. And, one of the things that I've learned and part of my coaching program with these parents is learning to stay out of the power struggle with your kids. And that was a tough one for me to learn because it's easy for me to get sucked into an argument. And my youngest is a master at pushing buttons and arguing for the sake of arguing. And before I knew it, I would be sucked into this argument and finding ways to start with, to recognize the signs that it's coming, and just like the changes in body posture and tone of voice and the things that start happening that lead into where that argument is starting to brew, to recognize that and be able to step back from it and then redirect the conversation to different ground, or separate yourselves from that until you can calm down and not have that conversation in the heat of the moment, and then to reset things so that you have better boundaries and better understanding, and to not engage in those conversations in the heat of the emotion. And sometimes that's hard because, we just, in the blink of an eye, we're caught in it and we have to find a way back out of it. And so often as parents, we kind of get this thought that we have to win this, right? But nobody wins in those situations. And so finding a way out of it where you can have conversations with your children or your spouse or whoever it is on a little bit more calm ground versus in the heat of the moment. Because so many times things are said that you don't really mean that, but it comes out in the heat of emotion and you can't take that back. So,
Right. I I had there's a visual and I can't remember if it's words of Terrence Real or John Gottman or one of my favorite teachers, Amy Gianni, but it's
mhm.
like we have to sit on the same side of the table rather than like these arguments that we are like
Yeah,
opposing each other, right? And trying to that power struggle becomes real. But if we can visualize ourselves like we're sitting on the same side of the table, we have the same goals. We really do, even though we don't recognize it. There's a
yeah,
lot of things that can shift if we can look at it from that perspective.
yeah. And I think sometimes we have to be willing to try to step into their perspective a little bit more
Hmm.
and let them step into our perspective, right? Because we're kind of fighting for our point of view, but sometimes the answer is in being open to their point of view.
Right.
And
It's an understanding rather than like fighting for our point of view and fighting to be right. It's like let's strive to understand each other rather than
yes,
be
yeah,
right.
yeah. And so often, if you can get to that place, you can find so much common ground, right?
Yeah.
And then you can build from there. And I think a lot of, for me and for parents that I talk to, oftentimes those are around boundaries, is where those things start coming up. When is curfew, and what are you allowed to do and not allowed to do? And what friends can you hang out with, and where can you be? And things like that are where those power struggles start to come in. And I found that the more often I could just sit and have a calm conversation with them about why they wanted to do that and why they felt that was right, and just let them get their point of view out, then you can figure out, okay, well, I'm okay with this and this, but I'm not okay with this part over here. And then, you can work together where you engage with the other person in creating something that you can both agree on versus my rule is law and that's just the way it is. So,
Yeah. We often hear the phrase, I just need to be more humble in the situation. And I I really hate that phrase until because it just kind of has a whole lot of different connotations with it. But until I discovered in reading Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart, her definition of humility is trying to get it right, not be right. And
yeah.
I like that is something that I can grasp onto, right? Like,
Mhm.
yes, if I'm trying to be right, that's not humility. But if I'm trying to get this relationship right, if I'm trying to
Yeah.
you know, work on loving this person in a good way, then that's
Yeah.
humility. So anyway.
Yeah, I like that. And I also like one of the things, a question that I ask myself is, who do I want to be in this situation? Who do I want to be in this relationship with my son or my husband or my daughter or a coworker or whoever, right? If we work on becoming versus work on doing, then that changes our perspective as well. Instead of, well, what do I want to do about this? Who do I want to be in this circumstance?
Yeah.
And, yeah.
It's awesome. Well, I hear through the grapevine you have a summit specifically for parents and foster and adoptive children. Can you share with me a little bit like what do you cover? What are the topics covered in something specifically for that audience of people?
This has been just a dream of mine come true with these summits. I do 2 summits a year, one in the fall to prep for the holidays because holidays can be very chaotic for foster and adoptive kids, and one in the spring, late spring, to help the parents prepare for the kids being at home all summer long. For me, sometimes that was the hardest time is when they were in the house all day because the only peace I had at times was when they were on campus. And then Heavenly Father gave me the gift of homeschooling for the last few years. And I did
I
not
can't
think
tell
that
if you're
was
being
good.
sarcastic. I'm like, are you
I
being sarcastic?
now I did not see it as a gift. And I was probably the most anti-homeschool parent you ever met in your life. But as he prepared me for that my kids could not handle being on the public school campuses. They were not thriving in any way. And he really just helped me down that path and helped me understand that. And it was such a blessing to me. And it was something that I thought and I didn't want. But when I let go and opened up to that, it really was a blessing and a gift. But it was one that was unanticipated. And I would, in the beginning and knowing it was coming, I never would have said it was a gift, at least not a nice gift, right? But in the end, it really truly was. But because I knew what it was like and the stress that I felt knowing that the kids were going to be home all day. So, what we do at the summits is we have right now, they're only virtual. I hope someday we can do this in person. But my goal with holding the summit is to give these parents a day out away from the kids where we can provide some tools for them and some coping skills for them and just some relief and a place where they can gather with other foster and adoptive parents who are facing the challenges that they're facing or maybe facing different challenges that they have some experience and can help with. So this spring, our summit is on thriving families, and we are offering classes on EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, which is tapping to help with emotional release. We have a class on teen anxiety and understanding your teen's anxiety. So we're really looking forward to that one. That's Amy Molitor, and she is just fantastic with working with teens and working with parents to help them understand that anxiety, because I think that there's probably some anxiety on the kids' part as well at having to be home all day and not have as much away from the house time. We have a class on educational advocacy. Sometimes it is difficult to advocate for foster and adoptive kids. Like when we had foster kids, trying to advocate for them in the school districts is a little more complicated. And so getting all of the testing done and getting IEPs put in place and things like that. So I have Sharon Dunleavy, who is an expert in all of that, is going to come and present on educational advocacy for your children in the schools so that they can actually get the help they need. Because so many of these kids have had so much trauma that actually being able to sit down in a classroom and focus on learning is really difficult for them. They just don't have the capacity to do that when they've been pulled from home to home to home, and they don't trust adults. And so then we take them and just drop them off on campus, expecting them to be the model student. I had one who really struggled with the ability to even be in a class, and we ended up really having to pull him because he was so disruptive in the classroom. But I didn't necessarily know how to advocate for him. We didn't, back when I was in the thick of everything with my kids, the internet didn't exist. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have support groups. We didn't have all of these things that we have available now. So, and then I have a specialist she does a lot of brain research. And so she'll be there talking about, I'm so sorry. Her topic just went right out of my mind. But she's providing classes on, I believe she's going to work on dealing with the meltdowns, because sometimes these kids really they don't even know what's causing it. And the next thing you know, they are in total full-blown meltdown in the grocery store or somewhere. And so she has some techniques that parents can use that will help that child come out of that meltdown more quickly and get things back on stable ground. And then I'll be teaching my class on staying out of the power struggles. So for this spring one, those are areas that we're going to work on with these parents.
I appreciate you sharing those subjects, those topics of the classes. Well, for two reasons. Somebody can see like what they can look forward to and anticipate learning if they wanted to attend. But also, I think just hearing those subjects is valuable, knowing like defining or just stating that these are things that are real and people struggle with. And like even just using the word meltdown for us to recognize, oh, this child is kind of having a meltdown rather than just like, I don't know what's happening. It's chaotic. And, like giving it some words and labeling something often gives you even just that itself gives you some power over the situation. So I just love hearing those different topics that you're discussing because it makes them real and something you can talk about and know are you can find things to help with that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think part of my passion for all of this is I did not have access to the help that I needed. And
Hmm.
so if I can provide a path for these other parents to get help in these areas and the things that they are most struggling with, then that provides joy to me to help them get through things that I had to struggle through on my own.
Hmm.
I know, just as an example, there was a video, some friends of mine had posted this video of this child, and the mom is driving, and this child is in full-blown meltdown in the car, and one of the siblings has a cell phone and is just videotaping this meltdown. And then they posted it, and all of the comments, people were just kind of laughing and, what is this? And then they were there was a variety of condemning the mom and what did she do that caused the kid to do this and XYZ. And it just hit a nerve with me. And so I just tried to gently, remind people, first of all, why isn't the person with the camera putting the phone down and helping this child who's in such distress? Why are they filming and then putting it up as this funny video instead of looking at there's a real issue here? And rather than condemn the mom, perhaps she's doing the absolute best she can to get home so she can get him out of the car and help him with everything that's happening. Maybe she's not in a place where she can pull over to the side of the road and deal with this right away, right? And so as I just put my comments underneath there, my friend who had posted it came back and she just said, I am so sorry. I never even thought about it from that perspective that, the parent might be doing their best to try to get to a place where they can get the child and help the child. And she said, because she knew me personally and she knew my family and my kids. And she said, it just never crossed my mind. The things that you go through with your kids in the car at any given moment, somebody could explode. And so she ended up taking the video down, which I appreciated. But so often, when I see a post about that kid and that parent, I think people are not aware what it feels like to be that parent and to have that kid. And those things strike a nerve with all of us who are that parent. And, we really are doing the best that we can. And sometimes these kids just have such trauma in their lives that they don't have any ability to recognize their emotions, to manage their emotions, to regulate, or to be situationally aware that maybe this isn't the best place to have this meltdown in this
Yeah.
conversation, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think we just all need to have more patience and love for each other and just have more understanding instead of judging and saying, oh my word, why doesn't that mother do something? Why not walk over and say, can I help? How can I help? What can I do
Right.
to support you? So.
Yeah. Why do you think it's important for parents of foster and adoptive children to attend an event like this?
I think it's twofold. One, as each class is going on, because everybody's in the same classroom, it's done on Zoom and we don't break into different rooms.
Okay.
So everybody who attends, and it's free, there's no charge for this summit. So parents can come for free. So as they're in, let's say they're in Cynthia's class on EFT, right? They can put questions in that they have about that, and then they can be answered right there. They also have an opportunity to have discussions with the other parents in the chat. So a lot of times the chat is just going crazy during the class, and we're kind of monitoring the chat to see if there are questions that need to come up. But the support that they have for each other, with somebody will put something in the chat and then another parent will come in with support for that parent going through that. So you have somebody teaching you how to do this tool or how to use this coping mechanism. And then you have other parents supporting you in what you're struggling with and what you're commenting in the chats for. And at the end of the classes run 30 to 45 minutes, and then we open it for open question and answer period at the end of each class. So they don't have to wait all day or try to take notes all day to, get answers or figure things out. I know that for me, when I was given an opportunity to go to an event where there were other foster and adoptive parents there, it's such a peaceful feeling when you are surrounded with people who know really truly what you're going through. And there are aspects, I always say it's like a Venn diagram, right? Where you have this circle and this is parenting, no matter whether it's biological, step parenting, foster parent, adoptive, kinship, whatever you're doing, here's this circle that involves that, right? And then you just have this circle over here that overlaps into this circle a little bit, but foster care has its own very unique aspects to it for these kids. Everything in their lives feels very temporary, and they often feel unwanted and insecure and unloved. And sadly, so often when kids are taken in and out of foster care, moved from one place to another, that is done by putting all of their belongings in a trash bag. And that does not help these kids in any way, shape, or form to feel like they have value. So, one of the things that we made sure is any child that came into our home left with a duffel bag with their name on it. So, their belongings were not in a trash bag when they were being moved. But then you have adoption over here in this circle, and part of that overlaps with foster care. There are some similarities between those two circumstances, but there are things that adoption has that foster doesn't. And then you have the little area that overlaps with all parenting. And for me, opportunities to be in a room or in a space where other parents who really truly understood what was happening in my home and what was going on in my home was just such a relief, because you could be totally honest with them about some chaotic event and they would totally understand it and get it. Where some of my dearest friends would look at me like I was crazy when I said I had to be released from my calling as an assistant den leader for Cub Scouts because I couldn't be gone for 45 minutes in the afternoon, even though my kids were at that point, the kids in the house were, I think, 11 to 16. I couldn't leave them alone for an hour. I would come home and two of them have pulled knives on each other, or this one is knocking that one down the stairs, or, some chaotic thing is happening because they're so dysregulated emotionally. And they would look at me like I was insane because they see these beautiful children at church who are so well behaved in public, right? And then they're like, there's no way that kid's doing that at home, but it is happening. And so you stop telling people what's happening because they just don't believe you. So when you're with a group of other people who are in those situations, you just have the ability to be open and to share what's really happening and know that they get it. They totally understand it because they just had the same thing happen in their house yesterday.
Mhm.
There's just a
There,
bond.
yeah, and like it's a core need of human beings to be seen and to be understood,
Yes.
and how important it is for us to seek people out who can be those people, right? We can be that for ourselves, but we need each other as well.
Yeah, we do. And you can start to feel very isolated if you don't know other foster and adoptive parents in your area and you don't have that group to turn to. Like I started really withdrawing because people didn't believe what I was telling them. And so I just quit talking to people about that. And I missed activities. Like I couldn't go to Relief Society activities, or we couldn't always go to a ward activity because all of this stuff was going on and happening. And so then you start to feel like you're not a part of things. And if you isolate, then that makes it even worse. And it feeds into the sense of failure. And
Okay.
you start losing your confidence, right? I can't even parent my kids well enough to be able to go to a ward activity and have my kids behave for an hour, right? And so, which really, I mean, that's a thought, right? But it feels very true. And when you start to feel that way and you start withdrawing, then it's so easy to start becoming self-critical, where then your confidence goes, instead of leaning into that and knowing that you have the confidence, you can manage your own emotions and regulate yourself. And you can then use the things that I teach you to teach your children regulation. And so much of what our children learn is just through osmosis, right? Just watching us helps them to learn how certain things in life work. Because we don't necessarily sit down and teach our children every minute little thing about life. They watch us and they learn through that. But sometimes with these kids, they have been in survival mode for so long. Every day of their life has just been trying to survive. They haven't had a chance to pay attention and watch and learn things. And so they can be behind developmentally. And so their behaviors are behind. And then when you add the trauma of abuse and neglect on top of that, it puts you in a different realm of parenting than everyday scenarios and situations. So
I just think, part of the importance of learning these tools for ourselves, like energy is real, right? So if your energy is amped up and stressed, they feel that whether you're acting upon it or not, it's there. And so when we learn these things ourselves, it cannot help but have a trickle down effect in some way on the people
yeah.
around us.
Yeah. I think one of the oldest of my adopted daughters, a few years ago, we were together at a family event, and she said, Mom, you're so much more relaxed than you used to be. That's twofold. Number one, I've learned to manage myself better. And number two, I'm no longer responsible for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think as parents, and I don't think this is unique to just me, but for me, being a parent, I felt such a deep sense of responsibility to get these kids back to Heavenly Father safely. And then when I adopted these six and they had so much trauma, I felt that weight even heavier to get these kids back. And I made some of the biggest mistakes because then I became more controlling and trying to manage everything. And, well, you can't go do that because that's not going to get you back to Heavenly Father, right? And so for her, she just saw that intensity in me at times that was just didn't need to be there. So the more I've learned to manage myself, and one of my favorite scriptures, I'm not fabulous at references, but it's in Jacob. I think it's the last couple of verses of Jacob chapter 4. I'm sorry, I should have looked that up. But Jacob is talking to all of his people, right? And he tells them he can't continue on that day. It's the end of the day. And he's telling them to go back to their homes and come back the next day. And he will give them more information on things. And he says, and I'm paraphrasing here, unless through my anxiety I stumble and fall, and he's not able to give them the messages that he needs to give them because he has such great anxiety over them. Now, I don't know how many times I had read that verse while I was actively parenting, but it never cracked me over the head until my kids were gone. And one day I was just studying on my own personally, and I read that verse and I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I did. I totally stumbled over my great anxiety over my children. And therein, I made mistakes in how I handled things and how I communicated things with them. And that energy level, like you said, my daughter recognized I was much more relaxed than I had been when she was at home trying to be parented by me. And so I thought, well, it's kind of too late for me. My kids are all grown. But I immediately called my kids that have kids and said, okay, you got to read this verse and pay attention. Don't make the mistakes I made because of anxiety over your kids, right? Learn now how to handle your emotions so that you don't stumble in anxiety and not be able to have confidence in yourself and in your children, and trusting your children that they're learning and that they're growing, right? And that they will be okay in the end. And you and I have talked a few times about writing books, and that actually the title of my book is The Osmosis Effect, and it's a parenting guide for foster and adoptive parents, and the things that our children learn by osmosis, and how when we get better at managing ourselves, then our children see that, and then it just ripples throughout the family and it just helps. And I just feel like the more help we can give these parents and the more support we can give these parents, they will become more effective parents. And these kids are going to have so much better shot at a healthy adult life.
Well, I have to say, what you said, it was too late for me then, and for sure it wasn't too late, right? Because we started off by talking about rebuilding, and like, I mean, the things you've learned now, and this, the thing you've learned now has changed your relationship with your kids, and it will change the relationship with your kids' kids, right? And so
Yeah.
it's never too late, and in fact, it was perfect. I mean, you wouldn't have learned the things you learned now had you not had the
Yeah.
experiences that you had then.
Yeah.
You don't
And
need me
as
to
I
tell you
say
that.
now, if I was actively parenting in where I'm at now, I would be so much better parent, right? Better qualified, better knowledge, better able to cope with all the stuff that was
Oh,
going on. But, we learn and grow. And if I can
but
help
you
somebody else,
weren't, right? You weren't, and there's a
I
reason
was
why.
not perfect.
Yeah, yeah, for
And I
sure.
often, people remind me all the time that, I may not have been the perfect parent, but I was the perfect parent for that child in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably one of the things that I had the hardest time accepting, because I would look back and think, but I wasn't doing my best. I knew I should have been doing XYZ and I wasn't, right? And we just beat ourselves up way too much. I read Stephen Covey's book, The Divine Center. And when I read that book, it just helped me heal my own heart and helped me to recognize that I was not accountable for every single thing that my children did. And that regardless of whether I turned left or turned right, my kids know the gospel. And whether they choose to live that is up to them. It's not up to me to try to control all of that. And so that just brought me that so much peace, being able to let go of thinking, well, if I had been a better parent, my child wouldn't have chosen that, right? They probably would have chosen it no matter what I did. So,
Right. Right. Well, there's a reason why we chose the plan that we chose, right? To come
that's
here
right.
to Earth in the first place. Sometimes I think the lack of agency seems really tempting to want to
It
grab
does, doesn't
onto.
it? Yeah. As we watch our children, we're like, wait a minute.
Uh-huh. That wasn't a
But
good idea after all.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Bonnie, can you share with people before we go where they can, where the summit will take place, how they can sign up for it, all the things that they need to know?
So the summit is going to be held on April 26th, which is a Saturday, and it will be from 9 a.m. I think we've set 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time. So just
Okay.
get your time zone based off 9 a.m. Pacific time, and work that into where you're at. I don't have the link. It will be virtual, and all of that, we will start promoting it in late March. So, but by the time this podcast airs, I will have all that information so it can be posted with the information for the
Oh,
podcast.
good.
If you're okay with that, I can get the links to you,
Uh-huh.
and then they can get the links directly off of the information with the
Yeah.
podcast. So all of that is in process right now because we're a few months out from that still right now.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah, and
good.
they can find me on Facebook under Bonnie Butler Coaching, Instagram. I'm not super active on there. I am working on that. That's a work in progress. Social media and I are
Oh,
work
I
in
know. It's a
progress.
love-hate relationship, isn't it? I
Yes,
think it is for many of
yes, it
us, but
is. And then I do have a website, bonniebutlercoaching.com, and they can always reach out to me through email, bonnie@bonniebutlercoaching.com. So,
awesome. Thank you so much. What a sweet and tender conversation to have and to just bring awareness to so many of us who that's not the life that we lived, right? Like, but we are surrounded by people who are living a life. Everyone around us is living a life different from us.
yeah.
And just gaining an awareness of
Mhm.
having more compassion and understanding rather than always comparing or judging, I think
Yeah.
is there's just so much value. We can never have enough understanding and love. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing your story with us today.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thanks for having me on and letting me promote my summit. And hopefully it will be helpful to somebody out there somewhere and we'll be able to make a change in their lives.
Yeah, for sure it will. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today and share this with people that you know who could benefit from attending a summit like this. What a great gift you could be offering to them by just making them aware of such an opportunity. So have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you again next time. Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.